This is a sanctuary for peace. Can you feel it?
Yes.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The Franciscan priest, Father Richard Rohr, asks an interesting question. Which word is most important in the phrase contemplation and action? Now you might say, well, it's action, because without doing something, nothing's going to change. Or you might say, no, it's contemplation. You want to connect with Source and be guided by Spirit, whatever it is you're choosing to do. And his answer is the word and. Both aspects are needed. And as you heard earlier, our mission at Unity Spiritual Center is transforming lives and inspiring people to make a positive difference in our world. So this mission has two aspects to it. There's the internal part, spending time in the silence every day, focusing on the awareness of our connection to Source and listening for guidance, asking for guidance. And this interior aspect of our work includes transforming our lives by healing any unfinished business that we might have from the past, so that we can take action by walking freely through life, unfettered, unbound by conditioned behaviors that come from our past, that come from limited, faulty beliefs that we may have picked up in our earlier years. Beliefs like, I'm not good enough, I don't matter, people can't be trusted, the world is unsafe. Until we do the more introspective work, we will just keep projecting those beliefs onto our experience, and we'll be meeting up with what we don't want in life. And if I have a belief that I don't matter, that I'm powerless, or that people can't be trusted, what will my experience of life be? Life is going to mirror for us exactly what is in our psyche, and we will gather evidence, in fact, to prove unequivocally that what we believe is actually the truth. And we won't even know we're doing this. We'll just know that that's the truth. People can't be trusted. So we begin by cleaning up our own backyard first. And it's about creating and sustaining an inner life of peace before we see it show up in the outer world. And there really isn't any way around that. And this is why the Q process is very helpful for us on this journey. It becomes a valuable tool for seeing beyond the mirror. Do you see? We start to see it for what it is, and we look beyond it. And if we're not willing to change how we are being in the world is not going to change its mirroring faculty for us. And it's like getting up in the morning, looking in the mirror, and then trying to comb the reflection. So it's about changing our own consciousness first, instead of trying to fix the mirror. And learning to seek and serve the evolutionary impulse, the greater good that is coming forth. And so if we have a desire to transform our lives, we want to ask ourselves, why? What difference will I make from that transformed place? What's mine to do? Because when Jesus is reported to have said, these things that I do, greater things than these shall you do also, I believe he's referring to our capacity to be the one for making the difference in our own lives, wherever we find ourselves. And the ability to do these and greater things, it doesn't lie in some supernatural power that we have to get, or some mystical ordination that has to be bestowed upon us. No. It's rather how we are relating to life. That when we relate to each and every circumstance in such a way that we transform the situation, we make the difference right there and then. And it takes a practice of listening to the divine and clearing a path to allow the overflow of divine love within us to express through us, as us, stretching out into all realms of life. And that brings us to the second aspect of our mission, which is taking action from that clear, spirit-led consciousness, compassionate action, free from the past, allowing love to lead, bringing forth heart-centered action that can make a positive difference in our world. And we're talking here about the practice of contemplative activism. Transformation through awakened action. That's what we're all about here. My talk title this morning is Making the Difference. You'll notice it's not about making a difference. I'm talking about the difference. That's how important I believe this work is. Let me ask you a question, though. When you look around at the world, when you see the kinds of things that are happening around us, do you ever feel kind of powerless? Do you watch the news and wonder what on earth one person can do about it all? Seriously. Do you ask yourself, what difference can my small contribution make? So we might look at contemplative activism and ask, well, how does consciously becoming a presence of love, healing, and peace help to change the world? Not only do I believe that it does help to change the world, I am convinced it is the primary practice that makes the difference in bringing forth a world that works for all. I think it's seeking to evolve into being right now, and we are the ones to make it come forth. Do you know that about yourself? Because one person's actions can truly make the difference. Greta Thunberg is a prime example. She gets the nudge to sit with a sign in front of the Swedish parliamentary buildings and go on strike for the environment. One young person with a sign. 1 year later, millions joined her around the world. See, her vision caught. And there are many just like her who have been doing this work and continue to do this work. One person can make a difference, can ignite something. Mahatma Gandhi, we could certainly see how he made the difference in a big way. But did you know that as a small child, Gandhi was afraid of pretty much everything? From snakes, from the dark, to other boys. He was a very fearful child. Until a kindly woman who worked in his household taught him how to use a mantra. And from that one action, this woman inadvertently played a huge role in freeing India from non-violently from foreign rule. That one action that she took. So our heart-led actions can be the ripples that change the world. And we never know how far those ripples go. We just never know how far they travel. Oprah bought Christmas gifts for 50,000 African orphan children. They've been orphaned by the AIDS virus. And you might say, well, that's easy for her. She's got millions. But it was all due to one person's influence. It was a nun who bought Oprah a doll for Christmas when she was 12 years old, in a year when she was going to be getting no Christmas gifts. And that act of loving kindness stuck with her for so many years, and she decided she wanted to repay that in a big way. And her generous action of buying those gifts also caused countless people to open their hearts and to donate to helping these children. Just never underestimate the power of your kind and loving deeds. When I was in the 3rd grade, my teacher, Mrs. Carlton, told me she wanted to see me after class. And I thought I was in big trouble. But she sat me down and she told me that she thought I was a good writer. And she wanted me to write a book. And this book would have chapters. And so she said, whenever you finish a chapter, bring it into me and I'm going to read it for you and I'll help you with it. And I remember being quite stunned by what she'd said. You think I'm a good writer? Well, I wrote a book. It was all about a pig family and their adventures. And that's all I remember about it. I wish I could find those notes and just see what kind of stuff I was writing then, but what has stayed in my mind all these years is that someone saw something in me and cared enough to try to help me to develop into my writing ability. And to this day, I love to write, and I attribute part of that to this teacher. I tried to look her up about 30 years ago to tell her how much that meant to me. And by then, she was long gone. She's retired and probably passed on by then. But just think about that. One moment of kindness, encouragement, whatever it is, can put someone on a trajectory of transformation that we never ever see. But we can rest assured that love always makes the difference. Always. Last weekend, I spent time with the people who serve youth ministry in this region. And it reaffirmed for me the power of love, the importance of that work, working with our youth. And I was moved several times over the weekend by the commitment, the vision, the caring for our young people. What they are doing matters. Those of you who volunteer in the youth department, what you are doing matters more than you might know. So what's Spirit nudging you to do? What are you being called to become and to do? Tony Robbins asks a very potent and powerful question that I have adopted as my foundation question whenever I am considering saying yes to something. And here's the question. You ready? Am I doing this to be in service to something greater, or am I doing it to be significant? It's a great question. Because one of those ways is heart-driven and the other is ego-driven. And what I have found is this, that when I get honest about the answer, and then find that I'm doing this for my own significance, I get it. I get how I'm setting myself up for a world of hurt. Because when things don't go the way I want them, or they're moving too slow, or heaven forbid somebody else gets the credit, I'm going to react. I'm going to get triggered, see. And so this has become my go-to question whenever I find myself getting attached to results or trying to control the outcomes. Am I doing this to be in service of something greater or to be significant? So what kind of a difference do you want to make? See, that's the question we want to ask. So there's a story told of two brothers who lived in adjoining farms, and they had a creek running down the middle dividing their land. And they lived side by side peacefully for 40 years. They shared their machinery and they helped each other work their land. And then one day, they had a small misunderstanding that didn't get resolved. And it slowly began to grow and grow and grow until it became a major difference that they were having. And then finally, it exploded in angry words, bitter words, and then silence. And that silence, that rift between them grew wider and wider. It just became a chasm. And then one morning, there was a knock on the older brother's door, and he opened it to find a man with a carpenter's toolbox. And the man said, "I'm looking for work. I'm just passing through. I'm looking for work for a few days. Do you have any small jobs that I could help you with?" And the older brother thought for a moment, and then he said, "Yes, I do have a job for you. See that farm on the other side of that creek? My younger brother lives there, and we no longer speak to one another. So I'd like you to build an 8-foot-high fence along that creek, so I don't even have to see him anymore." My grandmother would refer to that as a spite fence. I think that's a British thing. So the carpenter said, "Oh, okay, I think I get the situation, and just show me the nails and the lumber, and I'll get started." So the older brother helped him get everything ready, and then off he went. He had to go to town for the day. And so this carpenter, he worked hard all day, measuring, sawing, nailing, and about sunset, when the farmer returned, he took a look at what he had done. He just was finishing the job. And the farmer's eyes opened wide, his jaw dropped. There, instead of a fence, was a bridge stretching from one side of the creek to the other. And on that bridge was his younger brother coming towards them with tears in his eyes. And he said, "You're a bigger man than I am to do this after all I've said and done to you." And the two brothers stood looking at each other, and then they embraced in the middle of the bridge, and then they turned to see the carpenter. He's hoisting his toolbox onto his shoulder, and the older brother said, No, wait, stay a few more days. I've got lots of other projects for you." And the carpenter answered, "I'd love to stay on, but I have many more bridges to build." So my question to you is, what bridges need building in your life? What walls or fences have you erected that need to be taken down? It's the heart that does the dismantling. It's the power of divine love that melts those walls. And some of those walls can feel pretty insurmountable. I ran into one of those walls this week. Full bore. Now, I do not generally get political in my talks. I'm well aware that not everyone sees things the way I see them. So let me preface this by saying that everything I'm sharing this morning is my perception and I own it. And you may not agree with my perception, and I respect that. And if that's so for you, then I invite you to translate my triggering experience into something similar in your own life. Because this week I observed some events on the political stage that have really put this teaching to a new level of testing for me. Beginning with witnessing a female reporter being, in my mind, publicly bullied for showing persistence in asking the hard questions. And then I saw the man who had done the bullying being given high fives for doing so, pat on the back. You did her good. And again, publicly. And I'm not going to lie, I wanted to kick some butt over that. Oh, but that was just the beginning of the week. Then it moved on to watching, again in my perception, undisguised corruption unfolding before my eyes in the political system. And I started building a giant fence as the anger rose up in me and a sense of powerlessness taking over my entire nervous system. And the stronger it washed over me, the more I was busily making everyone involved into the enemy. The enemy, the enemy. Anger, frustration, powerlessness, fear, outrage. It was all in there. And then I stopped. And I remember this talk I was writing. It never fails. Seriously, never fails. And so I did what I know to do. I sat down and I asked my heart for help, for guidance. Help me to see it differently. And I decided to do a Q process worksheet to help me work through it, see if it might help me burst through. And as I did, the first thing I noticed was how much my heart was hurting to witness this. And I saw that it had triggered all kinds of unfinished business from my past. I started to remember times I'd been treated that way, talked over, talked down to, believing my voice didn't count or mattered. I remembered times when I felt so powerless and sad about not being able to stop something from happening or fix something. This was a hard one for me. And the irony was not lost on me that I was writing a talk about how one person can make a difference and at the same time being unable to act in any way that could affect the outcome of what I was watching unfold. I got the dichotomy there. And so in the midst of all that, I felt great compassion for myself rise up. I started with that. I started to give myself compassion for how hard it is to feel this way. And as I did, my heart began to lighten. Things began to shift a little bit, and then I looked at the situation with the eyes of the heart, and I asked the deeper intelligence within me for help, for guidance in seeing this in a different way. And like a flash, I suddenly saw all the people involved in this as very frightened little children, caught in the illusion of separation. I saw how afraid they were, insecure, worried about losing power or being exposed. I saw them lashing out in fear disguised as bravado. And I realized how sad that was. Wow. And what I really got was this. What appears to be power over is really powerlessness in crisis. And I don't say this in any condescending way, but in total compassion for my fellow human beings, because I have participated in those same behaviors when I have felt fearful, when I feel like I'm losing control or I'm powerless. In fact, I was doing the very same thing in that moment as I was lashing out in this righteous condemnation. And so I caught myself doing it. And I actually felt the compassion in my heart grow even wider as Spirit showed me something else. We have to go against our true nature in order to do something like this, to act like this. And I saw how much that robs our soul, how much that drains us of our aliveness. And my compassion widened again for all of us and how hard it is to be human, to be hypnotized by the illusion of separation, to be caught in duality. It takes guts to forget our magnificence, truly, and our oneness. To be spiritual beings living in the manifest world and bumping up against small r reality all the time, oblivious to our true power. In fact, looking outside of ourselves to try to find it. And learning defensiveness, resistance as a way to cope. It's part of the human condition. Now, to be clear, compassion does not excuse corruption or hurtful behavior. Not in any way, shape, or form. It didn't make the actions I was perceiving okay in my mind. But I was able to think more clearly about what my authentic action needed to be in response. How can I take action in a much more empowered, conscious, and compassionate way? Much more so than I possibly could have in that first moment of reactivity. Unencumbered by the past. And so I wondered, what would serve the greater good here? Am I taking action right now to be in service or to be significant? Note to self, wanting to kick someone's butt falls very firmly into the doing it for significance category. I can attest to that. And so I spent time asking my heart how to respond to the reporter incident. And as I got into a state of deep, deep gratitude, deep compassion, the answer just became clear. And so I reached out to the media outlet that she reports for with some financial support in her name, and I included a note of gratitude and encouragement in honor of her excellence in journalism. But I waited to do that until I could do it with genuine love in my heart and a desire to help with the healing rather than creating walls of spite. And so my authentic action for the second situation, stay tuned. I'm still exploring that one. In fact, we're going to be exploring that question in next month's Islands of Sanity group. How do we use our spiritual principles to make the difference in the face of any powerlessness we feel about changing things that we find corrupt and egregious? And that's March 7th, for anybody who's caring about that. So if this is something you're struggling with, please join us. All throughout this troubling week, as I was able to tame my anger, I was reminded of something very important, and that is that the heart that beats within every one of us is the heart of God. And we are so much better than this. We are not meant to live cramped little lives, surrounded by walls and fences, unless we choose to be. We have been given access to the immensity of the infinite. Every person unique and irreplaceable. Spirit has transferred and communicated the divine image to every being on this planet, and that means you. And when we relate to life in this way, as a divine being in witness to the presence and the power of God at work in every situation, every circumstance, awakened and responsive to the presence, to the moments in our spiritual journey, when the presence is there, which is always. And when we allow love to lead, that is where we truly make the difference, because making the difference is our divine inheritance. And the work becomes not trying to fix the mirror, but bridging the divide in our own hearts. And what if we did that? What if we took all the perceiving that around us of things that are happening and used it as a wake-up call to remind us that we have the perfect life force inside of us that can help us rise above the illusion and bring forth our best action every single day? What if everything in your life, every judgment, every failure, every obstacle and conflict and illness and loss, was really about exposing your capacity to make the difference. And what if instead these difficult moments were access points for every one of us for our own transcendence and awakening? How might we relate to these challenges then? So it's not what's happening to us, it's how we're relating to it that makes the difference. Let me say that again. It's not what's happening to us, it's how we're relating to it that makes the difference. And we have a choice as to how we see it and relate to it. And you know what? It takes way more energy to be defensive, to be resistant, to be aggressive, to needing to be right. That is exhausting. And I'm feeling it today. I'm feeling the exhaustion from going through that whole thing all week. What a relief to remember the power of surrendering to the greater mind and allowing divine love and compassion to rise up and do its amazing work. So in your own life, consider, is there a situation you've been relating to in such a way that has caused a rift of some kind? An area you've been building a fence? How might you turn that fence into a bridge? What is one thing you could do to begin bridging the divide between you and another person? And as part of that outer action, what unfinished business do you have to work through? If someone's triggering you, pay attention to that. Pay attention to what the mirror is showing you. What might be the deeper lesson for you to work through before taking action? And how can you relate to the situation differently, with compassion, in a way that serves the emergence of something greater? If ever there was a time when we needed to stand up and demonstrate our true identity, it is now. Do you agree with that? Yes. This is the time. This is the time for us to awaken from the dream of separation, from the hypnosis of duality, and then through contemplation and action. Somebody at the first service said, contemplation. Stepping into our true powerful self, who we've come here to be. Because that's how we make the difference in our world, using our 2020 vision. And so it is.